Hey, you're Addison Brasil.
Yeah, I am. Hi, random British guy.
Didn't you write First Year at Grief Club, a gift from a friend who gets it?
Yes, I did. Did my mom pay you to ask me that?
No? I'm sorry for your loss, mate. Why don't you do a podcast to help people honor their grief?
You're not the first person to say that. You know what? Fine, I'll do it. But it has to be with my friends who get it. And it has to be for real people who get real life grief. Oh, and it absolutely has to be equal parts honor the journey and find the funny.
What does that mean?
I think you're about to find out. I'm Addison Brasil. Grief Club, the podcast starts now. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Grief Club, the podcast. I'm Addison Brasil, and this podcast is based off my book, First Year of Grief Club, A Gift from a Friend Who Gets It, where we take the chapters in my book and use them as launching points for deeper conversations with friends and experts. And today we are joined by a friend indeed. And before we hop in and I welcome him, I just wanted to kind of say, as we're at the beginning of this podcast journey, that when I think about what Grief Club is for me, it wasn't this idea of like a bunch of people getting together and talking about death and dying and sadness and all this stuff. What I was thinking about was kind of reflecting what I have in my real life when I think of my Grief Club. And that's, a group of people that so honestly and intimately acknowledge what I've been through that it then allows me to just like show up fully, and enjoy the parts of my life that I do, to laugh as hard as I can, to experience awe and hope and all the good stuff too, with space to honor everything else that comes with the challenges of dealing with grief. And I wanted to say that especially today, not only because we're at the beginning of this podcast journey, but because my guest today is a member of my personal grief club, someone who helped me get through so very, very much. So welcome to the show, Jared.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. It's like a pleasure to see you because it's been a while and to be here.
I know. And today I'll be honest with the listeners. Like I was having that day where I was like, I don't really want to hop on and do a Grief Club podcast recording. I'd rather just like kind of like cozy up and do nothing. And then it was like, oh, but wait, it's actually just hanging out with Jared. So then I'm definitely in. So I am excited to be here and I'm excited to be chatting with you. Before we go in the book, I have my conscious emotional check-ins, which I've brought forward with me from my mental health advocacy. So if you join me in taking a deep breath, we're going to check in before we get started. So in one word, how are you feeling physically right now?
Physically, I'm feeling great.
I'm going to say sore, which we can unpack later. Emotionally, how are you feeling?
Emotionally, I'm feeling a little chaotic.
Hmm. I'm going to say excited. And mentally, how are you feeling in one word?
Stable.
Love it. Mentally, I am interested. I know it's supposed to be one word, and then I want to explain immediately why I use each of my words. So the first thing I like to do is just give you a chance to kind of honor your journey openly, kind of let us get to know you. I'm sure that if I introduced you, it'd be very different than if you share a little bit about yourself and how you show up in the world and what you do. So if you want to just take a few minutes off the top and let us get to know you from your perspective, I'd love that.
I appreciate that. I would say right now, how I'm feeling is I'm a dad to an amazing son, and that's really like where I feel I am at the moment. Like a lot of my attention and energy has been shifting more towards him, and it's this weird change because he's 6 now, and as he was younger, he was more about mom, and it was all about mom, and now he's kind of his eyes are glistening when he sees dad, and he wants to hang out more, and I'm just embracing that. And so I'm a health coach and I work with people on injuries and digestive stuff and to help them move better. And at the moment, I don't see any of that. I see myself as a dad and trying to show up and be as present with him as I can has been like my focal point, probably in the last 3 or 4 months. And it's amazing because it's also like been the light of my spiritual journey. Like he's opened up things for me that I didn't think I would get being a dad. So that's where I'm at the moment. In the world is my profession. I'm a health coach and a movement coach, and I help people to get out of pain, to understand what the body is communicating when they're experiencing the imbalance of pain and injuries, and how the body is talking to them. And it's something I've been passionate about since I was probably like 12 or 13, and just shifted in so many ways. And I'm curious and intrigued by our body and the amazing things that it does, and how we limit ourselves mentally uh, to our capacity, and how to help people find the gift of feeling good, because when they feel good, they touch so many people around them, and they show up differently in the world. And
Mm.
so that's what I do. And I use nutrition and supplements and movement and lifestyle and regulating the nervous system to get there.
Amazing. Yeah, you got all the points already with all the dad talk. And I'm so happy to hear that, because I remember the days when you were saying he was lighting up and asking for mommy all the time. So
Oh,
that's a cool moment. And I know for myself that moment came even much later, probably, where my dad got to feel that. So I'm glad that he's getting there sooner. And that's great to hear. Before I hop in, I always ask, if someone walked up to you on the street in just a pedestrian way and asked you what the word grief means, if your son asked you what the word grief means, having no idea what the word meant, how would you respond to them?
um, I would probably, if my son asked me, I would probably tell him that I think grief is feeling an emotion, feeling a kind of loss, or feeling an unsettled about an event or something that's taken place, and that it's completely normal and part of our life to go through that. And then I'd probably share a couple of experiences where he's seen me cry,
Mm,
and say that that's what I was feeling at that point, and that um, I recognized when my mom passed just this last year that grief doesn't look the way I thought it looked, and that it comes and goes, and that it's this interesting thing that's kind of there, but not always there.
mm. Ooh, I don't know. I don't know, bro. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do this. I'm so weirdly like comfortable and like visceral with you that I just like, between you talking so lovingly about being a dad and then now with your mom, I'm grateful for you kind of showing up so fully. Um, I love that you acknowledge that too, that it just that honoring your grief didn't look like what it was going to. I think we all have this idea of like movie grief, and
Yeah,
it's just nothing like that. And things that we think are so important around death or grief, like funerals, or just the stuff that happens right away, almost the administration. That all becomes so blurry, and then it's this process that seems to just follow and make perfect sense and no sense at all the time.
totally, totally. And that's a constant reminder, is like to remind myself that whatever it is, it's okay. And if I'm feeling a way that's like not my normal, to reflect that maybe that's impacted in some, that's impacting that feeling. And I recognize that, like, I'll just be going along and hear a song, or like out of nowhere, it'll be like tears. And yeah, between, what you shared and some other friends, it was like, it's a different for everybody, and it doesn't have to look one way. And that those reminders that it's okay, I think, especially as a man, feels like it's okay. And I'll say probably the two biggest griefs that I've had to go through was my mom passing and my home burning down. And I can
Mm,
remember it being such a surreal experience of like, both of those were the only two times I can remember like sitting down and feeling like this existential, like, life is so weird. Like, we come here, we have amazing connections with people, we have this love, this with my mom, and then they're gone, and you'll never see them again. And then it shifted into like, what does it all mean, and what's really important? And yeah, it was just something that you couldn't read in a textbook. It was something that you could
Mhm.
feel, almost like taking a drug, that you couldn't explain to someone else unless they also went through it.
Yeah, and God, man, I remember not wanting to be your friend who got it. It's weird. Like whenever I go to send the book to somebody who I know well and love, I'm just like, I really don't want you to need this. I really don't want to, kind of welcome you into this club. And I remember having that you were one of the first people that, it was done. So there was no reason to not like, send it to you and kind of be like, hey, I hope this helps in some way. And it was just that was such a weird feeling to be like, put this out there to help people, but then I immediately wanted to protect anybody I knew from like,
Wow.
needing any sort of thing like that. It's just that weird thing of like, no, not you too. I didn't want to see you here. You know what I mean? And I think it's just like a weird form of love that like that protection that, oh, now you're going to get it too kind of thing. And I love that you brought up the fire because I had thought about that. And, there's so many times where when there's not a physical death that, we skip through things. Like in the book, I call them micro losses, not because they're small, but because sometimes you have to go back and look with a microscope for like the grief processes you ignored and didn't honor, where there was this, a huge life change, the loss of something extremely meaningful. And like, what better visual for that than, like, a fire burning down your possessions and where you call home and that sense of safety. And, there's so much there. And there's not necessarily like a ritual around the grief that would come with that. That's going to be something that you're doing on a personal level internally and being supported by those around you who kind of who know.
Yeah, that was an interesting one, and I think everyone's going to have their own way of dealing. And I remember with the fires in particular, like I sat there as the fire was like heading steamrolling towards us, like trying to pack everything and get everything, and then having this moment of clarity, like none of this matters, none of it. Like I just need to go, and it was a moment of clarity of like, yeah, the possessions don't matter, nothing matters, my son matters, I matter, so people matter, and leaving and then having this post traumatic of like I literally walked out with a shirt, a pair of pants, and a backpack. And I think
Mm,
I wore that same thing. I'm not even kidding you, for 3 months. And people were like, I didn't have any money coming in. So like it was like people were donating clothes. And I didn't want I wanted my clothes. It was
mm.
like this weird thing. And so I think we all have our own ways that we process and that we work through. And yeah, it is.
That really hit me in the heart when you said that. Actually, like I never have heard nothing matters before, and my brain immediately broken into no thing matters. Like that's what he's saying. Like no thing, all these things that, we feel like we care about so much. It's like in those moments, you didn't list any things. It's the people and the relationships and the connection. And, that's what matters most. I love that we kind of dabbled into that. So if people are guessing, um, the launching point for this week is the experiment on move, which is fairly early in the book. And what I kind of suggest for people to do is spend a week and just noticing their movement, just like making a movement journal. And just when you're feeling stuck, especially in the first couple weeks of grief, to just start to make the commitment to just move in some way, in any way, really. And before we get into that, I just want to share a little bit with the listeners, like, where my trust for you and our relationship comes from. So I met Jared after I was in a fatal accident where I lost my dear friend, and this is early on in this journey, so I probably haven't really spoken about that yet, really, in any other recording. But I was in this grief process where not only was I grieving my beautiful friend who passed, I was also grieving my life as I knew it. My physical body had just been completely hijacked. And the amount of pain that I was in 24/7, in our inner circle, you know, being a part of the same men's group, men's excellence group at the time, and just being good friends, you know, at that time, I remember pretty openly discussing quality of life. I mean, like, that's how bad the pain was for me all the time. And I was just really needing this rare combination of expert knowledge, but trust, because without the trust, there was no way I could sort of, you know, get back in my body and nourish it in the way that we knew I could, you know, to heal. And the long short of that is, you know, from that pain, I really did dip down to my lowest moment possible, which you were one of the people at that time that came in 24/7. I mean, I was at a suicidal moment there. Um, and and came in and just sort of one of my avengers of like, you're gonna be here at the end of this. And we really kind of went in, and that was a very close group of people that, you know, I trusted to help me with my body, with my mind, and with my soul, kind of, um, to get through. And I mean, to be honest, without those people like you, this book never would have come out, because I wouldn't have been here to write it. So like, I wanted to stress that, because there's, you know, there's experts and there, you know, there's coaches and people that you can go to, you know, for all of these things, but it's a different level to have that type of deep trust when you really feel like your livelihood and your life is threatened. It could be ending, of who you bring in at that moment. Like, that's something that really changed everything for me. And obviously we focused a lot on, you know, nutrition and how I was taking care of my body at that time. And then, you know, you were one of the very few people that I trusted to help get me moving again. And so yeah, I just kind of wanted to share that. And that's, you know, why you're here and why you're here so early, because you made it possible for me to be here and do any of this, really.
Wow. I hear you and I receive that. Thank you for saying that, because there's a lot of times where I don't uh, recognize what I do, and so I appreciate that it had an impact.
Yeah, I recognize it, and this bromance is gonna turn to tears if I don't laugh. So I'm gonna do the Addison and laugh a little bit. So let's talk about this, because when someone's entering a phase of grief, and again, I offer this experiment extremely early, and I thought a lot about what experiments someone would even, you know, be capable of, you know, in the first couple weeks of grief. And I wanted to get this one out first, because I feel like this idea of stuckness when the loss of something meaningful or the loss of someone so meaningful comes is one of the first things that I can sort of remember when I try to like piece together the weeks after, say, a funeral or just the shock of anything. It's just like feeling stuck and never being told or never thinking, like, just actually simply moving in some way, in some gentle way, would be, you know, monumental, than just kind of getting stuck. And for me, it was definitely like a freeze thing, you know, where I was just kind of staying still. And maybe if I don't move and I, you know, me clench everything, that like this won't be true. And just in this like state of protection. So just thought maybe we could start there, is maybe talk about, if someone's in that initial stage, is what you might say from a movement perspective about, you know, what's happening in the body, and what some gentle ways to just kind of to move a little bit at this time.
Well, I think I think there's a lot of things happening for somebody, and depending on their past, their history, where they came from, it'll be a little bit different. The first thing that comes to me is like, if you've ever been in a cold plunge or in a cold bath, you get into that bath, and at first there's these hyperventilations as your body tries to regulate, because our body's always trying to find this balance. And I noticed at one point that, like, if I'm in really cold water and I don't move, nothing like I try to stay in that. And the moment you move, you feel like the extra coldness and all the sensations. And I think it just depends on where a person's at, whether they need to shake that up or they need to sit still. But
Hmm.
if you look at how humans and how we are the way we are and how we created our brain, and we're designed to move. There's no way about it. Like, we are designed to move. And I think it's something that calms and meditates us is by walking. I think just gentle walking is a place. And there's accounts in the military where when men or women are going through emotional stress and trauma, they march them.
Mm.
And I have friends who were construction workers who, when they would go through stuff, their dads would just make them dig ditches because the focus on something else, moving your body, this repetitive motion actually calms and soothes us in a way. And
Mm.
so I think moving is a powerful tool that we don't give enough credit to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Completely. And just so we break this down, like, because for someone like me in our relationship, I mean, if you had said this pre that accident, movement for me was like the idea of something very physical. I'm an ex-professional dancer, athlete. Like, I mean, movement to me sounded like I was really doing something. And I, I came to realize, like, in these states of healing, like, just how gentle moving can be, like how simple, I guess, is what um I'm trying to say it could be.
Yeah. I think when we look at life is stressful. And so then if you're already stressed and you're going through grief and everything is amplified, to get up and make breakfast is hard. To go to the grocery store is hard. So the idea like you're going to get up and do a hit workout or anything like that, I don't think that's what the body needs. I think the body needs movement, but in a gentle way because everything just feels amplified. And maybe if somebody's going through anger, they need to up it up to get
Mm.
some of that frustration out. But for a lot of people, just consistently moving your body, moving your blood, moving your lymph, getting your system to kind of go through that. And there was this program in the 80s or early 90s called Brain Gym. And what they found was kids who did cross crawl movements, so that would be like crawling or walking, um, they would, if they did that before a test, they could connect left and right hemispheres of the brain, and then that allowed them to do better on tests.
Hmm.
So they were able to retain information, they were able to have better test scores. So there is something to us doing these cross crawl movements, these walking, these crawling, and I think it's just a soothing thing that's a part of our human makeup.
You've reached Grief Club. Leave a message after the beep.
Hey, Grief Club, it's Addy. Yeah, I am back talking during the ad, which should be your well-deserved break from listening to me talk, but we know sometimes that's not how it works. I just wanted to say, if you are really enjoying this, if you are feeling connected, a little less isolated and going, I only get this once a week. How can I stay connected throughout the rest of the week? The answer is social media. Now, remember, when you're using social media, we want to use conscious consumption, and that's what I always promise at Share My Grief Club. I'll put it in the show notes. Anything that I don't create, I consciously curate, and it's all designed to help people on their way to honor their journey, and if all else fails, find the funny. We'll see you there. Yeah, so if you weren't expecting him to tell you that crawling might be the way to start moving right now, you'd be surprised. I was laughing a little bit there because I was trying to go from wheelchair to hit workout. I wasn't trying to crawl, and like that is how some of us kick in. You're absolutely right. Like, you just want to go into something that, what will be way more intense than everything I'm feeling right now, or that opposition which I talked about, the freezing. But yeah, let's so with like obviously crawling, which as weird as that may sound for some people, that is a very basic way. And I mean, emotionally and mentally and in a big loss, you are sort of learning to walk again. You are crawling. You are learning who you are now, and like literally how you are on earth. But if someone's listening right now, the one thing I'm challenging myself to whenever I do this is like something they can do right now, like one tool, one thing. So what's one sort of simple movement that everyone can be doing over like the next 7 days and they're moving, you know?
Okay, so before we go there, I actually have a question for you.
Yeah.
Do you think, in terms of grief, that if you can think back going through it, do you think that doing the hit training or trying to is a way to not feel something or to feel something more than what you're feeling? Like I'm curious
Mm.
because we are really good as humans. When we feel pain, we want to run the other way. And if you listen to Eckhart Tolle or any spiritual teachers, they'll tell you that the way the way past it is through it. So to go deeper into it. And we want to find ways of, which I get, of distracting or not feeling, and I wonder if you could talk about that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's going to be different for each of my three grief processes, I think. I think specifically with the accident, that was threatened. My ability to do that. I was being told that not only couldn't I do that, but I would never be able to do that. And you remember that was not easy for Addison A to even listen to
Yeah.
anyone say can't do anything. But I think for me, like going back to the beginning, like you said, it's so personal in a way to your history and the way in your relationship, I think, too, with movement. For me, I mean, I danced at like the highest level possible for most of my life up until those points, so movement in a way would be similar to how somebody would want to talk it out for me at those times. And specifically for me, choreographing movement, directing others in movement was a way for me to speak. In retrospect, and for anyone listening to this, I'll say, although my brother passed, I was supposed to take the semester off. I was dancing on scholarship in Pittsburgh, and I was supposed to be off for the semester. And he passed on September 1st. And I was back dancing 14 and a half hours a day by, I think, September 20th. I fought like hell for them to let me back in, because as soon as there was nothing more I could do, as soon as I realized I couldn't save him, I couldn't change it, I wanted to go back. And I was very lucky in a sense that I had purpose going into a death rather than looking for it. I knew what I wanted to return to immediately. And I have to say, like, in retrospect, as much as like I don't regret the decision at all, but there was something about, obviously, like you're saying, that intensity, that distraction, that I'm unable to feel anything else. It, in some ways, it was an equivalent to, like, putting yourself into purposeful pain to not feel the pain you were avoiding. And I think there was definitely an element of that. And yeah, I think like an Addison of today looking back would take that guy and be like, what if you just went for a walk with yourself? Like breathing into everything you're feeling. What if we moved, but we moved within this? And I tended to do that when they would say, okay, now it's time to be artistic. You can choreograph something. You can. And other than that, it was like, be meaner to me, push me harder. Like, there's a lot of, healthy guilt that comes with, a 17-year-old brother passing and a 19-year-old brother living his dream, and it being a physical dream after you've watched, him with a brain tumor for 4 years and everything that comes with that. So I think like it all got wrapped up into all my sort of grief traps into just like literally moving as much and as hard as I could. And, later in life, I was a little bit more retired with my dad. And I think that's where my love of fitness, that's where we get into like sort of the boot camp days and like all that stuff, because I had to kick something up. But I remember hiring a personal trainer maybe a month after my dad's death. And for those listening, I found my father after suicide. There was a huge element of PTSD there. My body went through a transition at that time that I can't even describe. It was like the emotional version of what I would later experience physically with the accident. And I just remember wanting so badly for this guy to scare me and to push me and to just make me better, to control something. And it was just hundreds of dollars to waste. I couldn't do anything. I had no strength. Like, it was like a miracle if in those 15-minute sessions I was doing, 10 push-ups, because, as we learned later with our relationship, like, I wasn't eating, I wasn't sleeping, I was completely post-traumatic responding to everything, so it's weird how it's ebbed and flowed like that. But I do think like that's why I really wanted to divide it down today, this idea of maybe there's a trap there of intense movement or consistently moving so you're never sitting in, that idea, which I think you're kind of getting at there with the Eckhart.
Yeah, that's my thing. And one of the things I noticed with my mom passing is like our culture, our society doesn't allow for, so in other words, like my mom passed and I was learning how to take my course online and do all these things, and like I felt this pressure to be over and done grieving fast so I could get back to life. And it was hard to like sit in it and just allow the process to unfold for however long I needed it to, because society makes you feel like you got to get back to it, and so there's a timeline on it. And that's also kind of challenging. And so to what you're saying about that trainer, I have a friend of mine who he's located in Malibu, and he does stick work. And it's basically like this really intense stick massage that he learned in Russia. And then at the end of it, he kind of whips you, not like a heart, not like a whipping whip, but it's more of like a brute force. And in Russia, the men would go to war, and when they come back, like when you kill somebody, when you see the things you do, it's hard to intellectually let that go. Like you can sit on a couch and talk about it, but it still holds in your tissue. And I would feel a lot of the time stuck, and like I have this grief inside and I couldn't get it out. And he would do an intense stick massage, and every time I would get hit with that thing, he didn't have to talk to me, and I would just unleash. And it was this, sometimes I get that feeling of needing something physical to happen to release something. And for me, that was a pretty powerful experience. But to get back to your original question, it's like I think for most people, just learning to breathe, learning to breathe through the nose and to feel the body. Because I think as a trauma response, we go into our brain. We have all these mental calisthenics of what happened, what should have happened, what could have happened, what did I do, what didn't I do, and we get disconnected from our body. And so just sitting down for 5 minutes, which could be very hard for somebody, breathing through the nose, breathing through the diaphragm, and doing a body scan is a great way to just gently reconnect before you go for a walk of however long you need to.
Yeah, and listeners of this and readers of mine will be like, breathing can't be the answer to everything. But I always kind of do say, like, I find a lot of funny in that, because like it kind of is like, it is life, it does seem too simple, and it is. And again, like the idea of movement, it's like, I would think the simplest version of movement is crawling or walking. I mean, if you'd asked me 2 minutes ago, I would have said, okay, like just walk around the apartment. That's moving, moving your fingers, your toes. And it's like, you're going like, it's like the documentary zooming in through my body. And we're talking just like about moving your lungs and like literally, just creating movement. And what I think is strong is the acknowledgement and the awareness of that's all you're doing right now. That's the only thing to do right now, is to allow that movement to happen. And it can be as small as lungs moving, and sort of, and go from there. I always think it's too simple. And whenever people interview me, they're like waiting for this like big like life hack of how did he do it? How did the boy who lived do it? Breathing. I breathed a lot. I used to sit on my hands and breathe. I used to like all the different ways that I would, breathe. And for me, I mean, that was for weeks and weeks and weeks, right before we met after the accident, like that was the only movement I could do. I was in a hospital bed. There was, that was my run. That was my walk. That was my crawl, at that times. And you realize how much there really is there, in that movement. And I mean, we started so small too. I used to have that program, Movement Snacks, and like, just like, I mean, you really got to this place of digesting this idea of movement down for people to this really basic way that kind of gets you back in your body. And I feel like it's, that's something that, I don't know. I wish I could just be like, okay, go, Jared, now. Like, as they're leaving the funeral, like go and just give them a hug and just like, take them now, and just like, this is movement, because sometimes you're overthinking what movement is and what's expected there.
Well, I think movement is contextual also, like when you look on media, social media, when you look on commercials and magazines, it's the guy who's like, or the girl who's, on her Peloton at 5 a.m, sweating when no one else is sweating, busting their ass when no one is busting their ass. And like, there's a time and place, and a person who's grieving or going through a hard time, like maybe that's not the time and place. And one of the things I recognize watching my son develop is that, he's 6 and he has full faculties and capabilities, and he's never done a HIIT class. He's never done a treadmill workout. He started on his back, and he started rolling, and he started crawling, and he started rocking, and he can do anything he wants. He has full pleasure to do all the movements. And so we neglect that. And I think one of the things we neglect also is that our skin is our biggest sense organ, and it receives nourishment the same way we receive nourishment through food, but it's through touch and feel. So being on the floor and just rolling around and feeling the support of the earth at a time when you don't feel maybe supported or you feel out of control, it's like to allow that support and relax into that and know that something's got your back, kind of.
Mm.
These gentle things can have such big results for us that we don't even recognize. And to know that at one moment I will get back to that hit training, or I will get back to that high intense stuff, but it doesn't have to be now,
Mm.
and that's okay. So yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And it just turned the whole idea on its head too, in the sense of like, move to a place or a position where you'll feel most grounded, where you'll be most able to respond to what you're feeling, or to just honor it, or to have space for it. And I think that's something that just like maybe went right over my head, and now I can pretend that I expertly wanted to have that be the intended meaning. But moving to a room where you feel safe within your grief, moving to a place where it can be acknowledged versus where it's feeling ignored. And I know for me, I mean, being a product of 4 kids and a big family, I mean, just literally moving to where you could be you within your grief, like physically moving
Yeah.
myself into different rooms or spaces. That's a huge part. So that's a huge takeaway of, how can you move to a place where you can feel grounded and safe, and I just got that image of just sort of going to the ground and just laying on the ground, or like, I mean, it's like, I think like I'm thinking about the wrong type of people who would be listening to this going, "Well, I don't know about rolling on the floor," but then there's me, in these processes where one person said, like move in a way that where you're taking your socks off and you're going to grass and you're standing on grass and bare feet. And a part of me earlier than my grief date would be like, I don't know what you're saying, and I'm not going to do that. But then in those moments, I mean, my socks were already off, I'm like, okay, yeah, well, like anything to just, feel a little bit more, I don't know, settled in myself, in everything that seems like it's not settled and not myself, moving to that is important and just can be acknowledged. And I think at this time, if people are doing like the experiment of like a movement journal, there's so much here of like all the different ways you're moving, and being able to experiment compassionately and go, okay, when I moved this way, when I created movement in my life this way, it benefited me. So I'm just going to take that and I'm going to write it down, and it's going to be in my grief toolkit. And now I'm too smart to be dumb. So if I'm feeling this way again, as silly as it may seem, it's like, get the socks off and go stand on the grass, or go roll on the ground, or crawl. I really hope people write to me and tell me that they crawled after hearing
It would be
this.
great. It would be
I
great.
will just, or videos of, if you know, just
Yep.
moving through
Hashtag.
my grief just across the floor. Um, but yeah, no,
I,
I love that
I
idea.
think I think that's huge. I think, recognizing to walk in the mountains around trees, or to walk by the beach with your feet in the water, or, my son, like I have a kitchen table, and like I can tell sometimes when he's like feeling a little anxious, he'll go under the table and he'll just lay there. And
Mm.
sometimes I'll just go lay there with him. And so we have that, we know what places make us feel better. And I think as we get older, we either lose connection to that, or we think it's dumb. And so I encourage people to find, like you're saying, I think it's beautiful. Find the place in the house, find a spot that you feel settled, and like just be there. It's like a house cat, like just go be in that spot where maybe the sun is shining on your face through the window. Like, find your space.
I love that. Um, yeah, I mean, I feel like there's just been so much already to kind of take away from this. I mean, it's like, even for me, I'm getting things I thought I knew reminded as we're sitting here. And like, for those who will see the video or won't, I just had this weird smile on my face going, wait, there's a lot of stuff that Jared taught me already that I haven't been applying, in the latest wave of my life and grief process. They're interchangeable for me. What's there, but I love this because this is going to be early on, and you're going to help me do this, because when I said, as the intro kind of points out, if I was going to do this, I only wanted to do it if it could be equal parts honoring the journey, and I'll do all the stuff and I'll find the experts and I'll get my friends who gets it. But it has to be equal parts find the funny, because like I just like I didn't work this hard to be here to not enjoy my life and laugh. And you know better than anyone that most of the time, even in these terrible moments, I was just looking for how to get, you or one of our friends to laugh was sort of, it's just it's my joy in life. And I'm like, I'm laughing in a weird way during this conversation because like, and I'll let you go after me of where you find the funny or where you're finding it right now. But it's been such a weird day because I'm at the flat in London, and today it was like just like the first morning that it was really cold and I didn't want to get out of bed. And then I went to shower and there was no hot water. But as soon as you said cold plunge at the beginning of the episode, I'm like, it's so funny how in that moment, like I forgot, and I do quite often choose a cold shower because I know the benefits and that's all there. And that's a whole nother episode, cold exposure and its benefits. But, it's just so funny that in that moment that I was like so mad, like, and it was like, it was taken from me, like this hot water thing. And then I was just kind of having a morning where like I refer to lovingly as like I was babysitting myself. I had a lot to do today and I'm going, oh God, I got the baby today. Like I got baby Addison. What do I do with this guy? Like can't get myself to do anything. And I wanted to work out hard because that's, I wanted to accomplish something, all the things we sort of gathered about my personality in this. And so I did. I went to Barry's and I enlisted a friend to sort of be mean to me to get me to work out. And I got more than I asked for because he did what he called in his training, like the hardest sort of sprint running incline, combination ever. And I immediately just wanted out of that room. Like I was like, why did I come here? Get me out of here. But it was just so hard and so difficult. And just like seeing you, I'm like laughing lovingly at myself because the second I saw your face, I just was like, remember when you told this dude like you would do anything to be on that treadmill, like to be doing. And I'm like, today, dude, like literally, like, I don't know if this laughing is going to turn into tears, but like, I was like, doing the damn thing, like, and that was just something that like I truly, when we met, like did not think was possible. Like, it just, or at least everybody was trying to tell me it wasn't. And I just remember the way you like both kind of protected me and guided me towards like the healthiest way to begin moving and to take care of myself, but never once made me feel silly that I knew that this would come, this day where I was complaining about being in the Barry's boot camp red room. If you told me back then I would ever complain
About
about
running.
about running, it'd be like you're out of your mind. And like how beautiful that like I get to this day years later where I'm laughing and I get to look at you and I'm going like, oh, remember how you said you'd never complain, complaining about the cold shower, complaining about. And I just think that's, I don't know, I just think that's beautiful. I don't know. That's my favorite kind of laugh. Is it reminds me of my dad a lot because it was always the like gritted teeth, like, oh, you're something. Like, you're, like my own dad in that way, going, oh yeah, remember when you said if I could just do that, then I'll never ask for anything, and it's always the next thing. And I was like that. I mean, after the accident, I said, you can't stand. And all I wanted to do was stand. And the second I could stand, I said, then all I wanted to do was walk. And then the
Yeah.
second I could walk, they were, oh, now he wants to run. Like, it never ended. And I'm so glad that, I found people like you around me at that time that it is funny to us now because everyone else thought we were a joke then, me fully healing, no surgery,
Yeah,
doing
I
everything I
remember that.
wanted to do. Like that was a big joke by a lot of high up people, this idea that I had. And we're sitting here talking and I haven't had any surgeries and I'm sprinting. So I'm laughing and really enjoying like that right now. Just like how silly I feel now for my complaining all day and baby
But it's
Addison getting
great.
through the day.
But it's great. I remember that was an intense period for you because you were on the fence and you were really like contemplating, and it was like scary and there was a lot going on. And I remember kind of just being there like, yeah, I think you're, we did body work and I was like, nah, I think you're okay. Like you don't have to do it. And trying to get you to take that pill so you knew what I was seeing, you could see it too, and you had the courage to do it. You had the ability to trust me and to trust. And so it's like full circle to see you, complaining on a treadmill. I'll take that all day.
Yeah, that's like the best testimony of all time. Like 4 years later, cut to just complaining again. I'm like, all right, I'll listen to you. Luckily I'm on London time, so I only have to be nice to myself now and give myself credit for a couple more hours before I pass out because I can't do a whole day of it. What makes you laugh? Where do you find the funny in life? Where are you, where are you going when you're looking for laughter?
Oh man, recently I would say it's when I'm doing things I love to do, like moving. Like the last couple times I've been surfing with my brother and a couple friends, just out there with a group of guys, just that I've known for years, just laughing and playing like little kids in the water. Being with my son because he makes me silly, because he's silly and he does so many things that pull that out of me when I'm trying to be an adult and be serious. And I think that's where I find my most joy, is like when I can do an activity and kind of talk trash and be funny and then be with my son. I
Mhm.
recognize that those are my happy places.
That's such a good one actually too, is like the moving to where you can laugh. And like I love that you brought up the kids, and I think there's no mystery why I became so close to my godson when I was sort of rebuilding my whole life and my whole operating system. And it's like sometimes it feels unsafe to laugh when you're grieving, with other people who get the full concept of what you're going through, because you can feel judged and like maybe they think I'm better than I am and all this stuff. But when you're around kids, like they don't know better, and like they're literally just gonna say and do whatever they want. Like it's just so funny when I think back to like my godson like yanking on my neck and everybody like cringing, and there was just something so like, like innocent about that. And that's the way, he looked at everything. And it was like, it was always safe to laugh with kids at that time because they didn't know. And so I knew, it was safe for me. And so I love that can kind of, if nothing else, move to the place where you could laugh if there was a chance you were going to laugh, move to a place where humor is allowed, if that works for you. All right. Where can we find you, buddy? Where can they find you?
Um, so I'm at heal-strong.com, or they can find me on Instagram or Facebook under Jared Tavasolian or Heal Strong. That's my company name. And yeah, those are pretty much the spots where I can be found.
Amazing. And we'll put that in the notes. And as we're checking out, what's one word for how you're feeling?
I feel right now I feel complete.
Yeah, and say honored. Yeah. Romantic, if I can add that. Um, no,
I
it's
love
been
it.
so great having you, man. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming today.
Oh, thank you. I miss seeing your face. I'm really happy to see you today.
Well, Grief Club, that's the show. If you enjoyed it, please let us know by liking and leaving a review. This will help as many people who may need what we're talking about find it the fastest. Remember to honor the journey, and when that gets tough, find the funny.
You've reached Grief Club. Leave a message after the beep.
Hey, Grief Club, it's me. Yeah, I know you probably thought you'd get a break from me during this ad, but sorry, it's me. I wanted to take a minute to tell you about one of my favorite places in the world, Modern Elder Academy. It is the most beautiful location in Baja, Mexico, and I've gone multiple times. I've been in both their sabbatical sessions, which allow you to just go down there, kind of set up home base, and take part in deep conversations, connecting with other like-minded people, yoga, activities. You do as much or as little as you want. You can even work while you're doing it. It's amazing. They also have 1 week workshops that just get you so intimate with where you are and who you are in your life right now. I can't tell you how much wisdom I've fed on whenever I am in Baja in that magic. Also, how much food I fed on, because the food is beyond. Chef Tony is the man. and I literally return year after year for that food. Anyway, please check it out. It is my home away from home, and they are always so good to me. The staff, the founders, absolutely everybody. Modern Elder Academy, or as we lovingly called it, MEA.